Hi, and welcome to another episode of Hobo Prepper. I had to record my intro to the interview with Bridget, but this video is about a post conversation that I had with Bridget. And she said, "You know what? You should probably make a video about that because I didn't realize that." And I thought I've talked about this a little bit. And so, what I'm going to be talking about is the conditions of being homeless or losing everything it is that you have. So you sorry, we got mosquitoes here. So you might be looking at it and go, okay, I'm getting foreclosed on. I'm screwed. My pants are around my ankles and there's no lube. You may be really sitting there thinking, man, this is my shit. And what most people don't realize, and the average person thinks, is that in order to be homeless, you got to be a drug addict, but that's actually not what happens. That there are actually a lot of people that go homeless, and they go homeless temporarily, and then they get off the streets and they go about their life, and they probably never have that happen. Sometimes it's just from getting sick at work and not being able to pay their bills and kind of losing everything, to uh, just abusive situations, a lot of women that you will see out there, and you will, as a male hobo, you will not know where any of the women's shelters are. Do not go looking for them or anything else like that. And if you do have a chance to go into a women's shelter, which I have, you should treat it with reverence, because those women are running from violent people. And growing up in a situation like that, my mother was never smart enough to truly get away and go into a domestic violence shelter. Instead, she would end up just jumping from one to the other. So from personal experience, this is something that I want to make sure that I put out there, because part of the story I'm going to be talking about is the things that do happen to women out there, and things that you should be really thoroughly concerned about if you are a male out there, and so on and so forth. So a lot of people think that you become a drug addict, that you become a drug addict, and then because you're a junkie or a drug addict, you cannot pay your bills, and then you go out on the streets. And that's not what happens. And so I told her two stories. The first story is this. I was in Portland, and I met this guy, and he was chatting with me, and you could tell he was completely spun out. And he's like, "You're new out here?" I said, "Well, I'm new here, but I'm not new out here." And so he's like, "Oh, okay." He's like, "Man, you can't find a spot to sleep here." And he starts telling me his story. So he lost his job. He was trying to get on his feet, and he went to go get the job help that they give the homeless, which really isn't much help at all, because as a hobo, you've already got so many things stacked against you. By the time you've been out there for more than like 3 to 6 months. That's why they say if you're not off within 6 months, your chances of getting off are extremely slim. And a lot of that has to do with the criminal record, because eventually you'll be put into a situation that will uh, put you in a compromising situation. And next thing you know, you've got a criminal record, and you're like, "What are you talking about? I've never done anything wrong in my whole entire life." And so for the first time that happens to you, that's gonna be a complete wreck of your complete reality. But anyways, what this guy was telling me was that he lost his job, and he went to go look for work. And the thing is that you can't get a job because you're homeless, and you can't get a home unless you have a job, which you guys have probably heard me talk about that as well. But then also on the flip side, in the city of Portland, they are very hostile to the homeless. They may talk about how they're good towards the homeless, but they're not. Uh, some things to really be concerned about is most hobos are going to sleep around the shelter, or within a few blocks of the shelter, because they go there, they find out that there's no beds. Because in most cities, unless you go to somewhere like San Francisco, in most cities, the shelter beds are always full. Maybe 30% of the community can actually get in. And not that you actually want to go in there anyways, because one, you're going to catch crud, and then you have to deal with those health issues. And it doesn't matter how good your immune system is, you're going to catch crud. It's just like when you go to jail, you're going to catch crud. It's because of they keep the temperatures low to keep the bacteria down, but then it causes respiratory issues, and it just causes all kinds of issues. And so with the most hobos, they're going to sleep up against the building, or there's usually like a little doorway, and you sleep up there in your doorway. That's where you sleep so that you can stay out of the rain, stay out of the elements. If it's summer, you don't mind sleeping on the side of a building, or if you know it's not going to rain, you don't mind sleeping on the side. But most times, if you know that it's going to rain throughout the night, or if you have a feeling, it is best to be able to get under some sort of awning or something like that. So about 2 o'clock in the morning when the bars go around, there might be opportunities for certain places where you can go sleep under the awnings. But also there are little shops that don't have, like in San Francisco they have the gates, but most places they don't have the gates. And so you want to sleep in that little alcove. But what the city of Portland does is they tell you you're not allowed to sleep up against the building or on the sidewalk. You have to sleep on the edge of the curb. Now, there's usually bars around and stuff like that, especially where the shelter is located in Portland. It's right there on the edge of Chinatown, which is their version of Skid Row, which is really, it's not that bad. I've been to Skid Row. I've lived on Skid Row. I was there for about 3 months. I know what Skid Row looks like, and if you're a hobo, it's not nearly as bad as if you are not a hobo. If you're not a hobo, I mean, it's scary because these people, but if you're part of the community, it's not as dangerous as it is to those that are not part of the community. And when you become hostile towards the homeless are going to cordon off areas of the city where it's like, okay, this is our zone. You can't come in here. Businesses, you want to operate here, that's fine, but this is ours. That's what the Tenderloin has become. That is what Chinatown is in Portland. That is what Skid Row is in LA, and now we've got one forming up in Seattle. And so this is eventually, so the West has dealt with homeless on a large scale, more than I would say the East Coast, because on the East Coast there's a lot of density, there's a lot more going on the West Coast there's not. And in the 80s, because of the 80s and 90s, because of the spotted owl, the economy of Oregon was absolutely decimated. Most of our small towns went to crap. Okay, but by putting your hobo, forcing them to sleep up on the curb, and you're right by a bar, you got people that are driving drunk at 2 o'clock in the morning. If somebody's pulling up to a curb, chances are they're not sober. So if you go sleep up on a curb and somebody pulls up in the middle of the night, the likelihood that you're going to get ran over is absolutely crazy. And if you do decide to sleep up against a building in the city of Portland, you will have people that will come by that are so self-righteous. You're not allowed to sleep here. You need da. It's like, well, I can't get a job without a place, and I can't get a place without a job. And then you want to sit there and berate and belittle me because you're holier than thou. These are all of the things that you have to deal with. And so this kid, because it's like you can't, between dealing with the guards and dealing with the late night oppressiveness of the security force around there, especially, this is where homeless sleep. This is like their one place where it's like, I can go, I can be safe, and I'm around others that are like me. They're not going to rob me, because you don't rob each other unless you're tweakers. Tweakers rob each other. Crackheads rob each other. But everybody else doesn't rob each other. Okay, and so I mean, this puts everybody in a bind. So the guy starts doing meth to stay up at night, because he can't sleep during the day, because during the day he's got to go look for a job. But by then, now he is stuck in a situation where he can't get a job, he can't get sleep at night, and by circumstance and the way that they push you out there on the streets, and as hostile as it is to the individual, to the unhoused individual. And people are justified in it because society says, yes, those are the scum of our society, and they tell you that we are the worst that there is, and it's not necessarily true. And this is, I mean, you even hear it from I allegedly. That's the main reason why, like, I don't have to like him for his information to be valuable, luckily. But like, even him, I listen to him, it's like, Dude, oh, what you think? You just to sleep out on the streets, you got to be lazy? No, actually, being out on the streets makes you work harder. If you thought that that someone was lazy, you see a hobo, they're not lazy. I can guarantee you that. I can guarantee you that because when you wake up, you got to spend 2 3 hours getting your stuff together, getting to a line, getting to go do this. Basically, it takes 16 hours a day to live because you're going from food line to food line, and if you don't want to beg, then you go to the food lines. If you want to beg, but the thing is that same amount of time that you're going to spend on the food lines is going to be about the same amount of time you're going to spend begging to be able to rummage up about the same amount of food that you would have gotten in the food line. And so all of these obstacles are put there, and they're put there on purpose to keep us out there. And here's the second story I will tell you, is that I was down in Houston. It was right after Hurricane Ivan. I was actually on my way down to Florida because I wanted to relocate to Florida and help out with the construction. I thought it'd be a great opportunity for me to get maybe at a better start. Maybe I'd find another place I wanted to be. This was before I went to San Francisco. Anyways, I'm in Houston. I got robbed at gunpoint in the third ward from a hotel room that I was staying in. Basically, I walked out of that hotel room the next morning with no money. At least I had my life, whatever. And quite frankly, I was being stupid, and I kind of deserved what I got. So don't feel sorry for me. You shouldn't. I kind of. I shouldn't have been being stupid, which was I'd been drinking and I was walking around. Yeah, no. That was my mistake. And the thing is when you're outside, unless you're established within the community and they know who you are, you better go be around people that are like you, whether you drink or this or that or the other, because that is going to be how you keep safe. And I wasn't being safe. And I didn't realize that anything that ends in ward in the South is not a place a white person goes. Especially in the early 2000s. I mean, we still had a lot of the stuff from the 80s and 90s going on. Anyways, so I'm out there on the streets in Houston, and I'm trying to figure out ways to get up on my feet, and I end up going to the United Way. I'm like, well, hey, the United Way, that will help out, right? That they do all these commercials. They say how they help the homeless. So I go in and I say, okay, well, I'm homeless. This is what happened. I got robbed at gunpoint. I need to, I need help getting on my feet. What do you got? What can you help me with? I mean, you guys advertise all the time. Do you have a drug problem? No. And even if I say I smoke pot from time to time, and he's like, that's not a drug problem. Because outside, drinking is worse than smoking weed. Honestly, the to be able to be within the community at some way or some form, some fashion, it's almost like you're a criminal for living outside. And if the person around you is too square, then that means that they may be an undercover, or they may be somebody that's an informant because they're too square. And so this is part of the reason why drugs do become somewhat prevalent. But each person, their personality goes towards the drug. It's not, it really, honestly, it has nothing to do with the drug itself. It has to do with their personality. A perfect thing is I know somebody, and I watch them, and they just started smoking weed and stuff like that. But all of the personality traits, down the line is exactly what you would expect from a crackhead. I think this person, if they were in the same situations that I would have, they wouldn't have gone towards something light. This person would have very easily gotten caught up within that realm because that is the core of their personality and who they are. And unfortunately, a lot of those people tend to be ex-soldiers. I don't know what it is about going over there that makes them more prone to going on the other stuff. But anyways, there are, your personality is really what's going to drive you towards the drug. It's not really the drug that comes to you in so many ways. I hope that makes sense, because it's not really easy to explain. But again, like I said, you don't want to be too square, because if you're too square, well then you're not going to be allowed in. And so you have to be willing to tarnish your record a little bit to be able to survive within the community, because the benefits of being of the hobo community, regardless of all the drugs and all the problems that are in it, hobos will look out for hobos. If a cop comes up to mess with you, they're not going to mess with. They're not going to come to your rescue. But after you get out of jail, they might see you and go, "Hey, look, I saw you got picked up. You got a sleeping bag. Let's get you over here." They will help you after the fact, because there's nothing they can do. Once a cop rolls up on you, the cop's already convicted you, decided that you're going to jail, and they're just looking for an excuse. And because you live outside, there's a plethora of excuses. And so this is how the homeless community, you have the way that the police force treats you is they come out and they harvest you. And they harvest you as a resource, because all crimes are commercial. There is a penal sum for each crime. And so the criminal justice system, even though it's supposedly supposed to be without the United States, the Supreme Court technically, by all rights, is supposed to be without the United States, but also the judicial system, because it's supposed to be a disinterested third party. It's supposed to be a referee that makes sure that everybody follows the rules. Well, when you have politicians and council members making it so hard because they need more money for their city, for all these programs, and for all this reckless habits that they're doing, that's actually bringing more people out there so that they can harvest more, because this is something that just drives me nuts. Okay? Because that penal sum, once you go in and the judge gives you whatever and tells you, okay, here you go, then even though you go and you serve, it stays on your record because you didn't pay the penal sum. So what the government does, technically behind everything else, because they don't want to let you know that you can actually get out from under it by actually paying the true penal sum, whether it be $1,000 or $1,500 or $25,000 or $1 million, whatever the penal sum is, because that penal sum is based upon the amount of time that you've got to be in jail, that you've got to be housed, and for all the resources to be able to pay for you to be there. And that's why they run the prices up. It's not because the resources and the manpower cost so much. It's because they need to make more and more profit, and so they just add it to your daily costs because they put it on a penal sum, which then gets sold out on the bond market as municipalities. And so what you're doing is you're buying people's crimes. Okay, because the state says, or the county or whatever jurisdiction says, that we don't want you to pay it off because we lose complete control over you. Because if you pay the penal sum, if you settle the balance, if you settle the difference, then they have nothing to hold on you. So essentially what they're doing is they send you to a kangaroo court, because it is nothing more than a magistrate in 90% of the cases. And then they hand down a verdict as if, just like what Congress is doing with January 6th, they'll hand down a verdict as if they have any true legal authority, which they don't. They have the authority of the purse and the authority to write the laws. They do not have the right to enforce the laws. They have other agencies and other aspects of the government that actually does that. And so you might sit there and you might look at these homeless people and you might go, "Oh man, these guys are just, they're bums, they're da 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 da." That's not the case. They are in a lot of ways. They are the first victims of this authoritarian regime that we're experiencing. And so now because here's the thing, and this is one thing that I keep trying to explain to my old man, is that as long as a majority of the people benefit off a system, they will look the other way and they will allow it to perpetuate itself as long as they benefit. The point in which less than a majority of people start to benefit, and as those people who benefit dwindle, then those people will now all of a sudden have their virtue bone triggered, and it's like, "Oh yeah, these guys are da da da, I've always known." No, you haven't, because you were part of the problem. You perpetuated the system, and then now that it's not benefiting you, now you want to act like you're an aggrieved American. Okay, and come on, let's get down to the nitty gritty and call a spade a spade. This is really what goes on out there. This is really what you have to deal with. So the next time you see a homeless person, don't look at them and think that they're a junkie. They're just trying to survive. And quite frankly, after all that crap, if you don't take something to take that edge off, I mean, you can only meditate so much. You can only deal with it so much. But I mean, I've almost been stabbed. I've almost been shot. I've had people come after me. I have been put into like these religious cults that I accidentally got into, not realizing it, and I've even told that story. I mean, there are so many adversities that, on one hand, you're at war, but nobody else realizes it but you. And so, just like a soldier, at the end of the day, he's gonna want something to take that edge off, and everybody has their choice. Okay? And for me, I made my choice, and I went with the nicest thing I could go with, because that fits my personality and who I am. That's why they call me Friar Tuck. Now, if I would have been a tweaker and they called me Friar Tuck, that really wouldn't have done that. And one last thing that I want to cover, if you've stuck around this long, I'm going to give you something bonus. And I want to explain to you why I even go by Friar Tuck, whereas I could go by my name. And I know that some people, and I'm going to tell you that within the homeless community, this is something that will cause you some serious turmoil if you violate this rule. This is probably the most important rule, and you will irritate quite a bit of people, and likely because there's a reason why you do it. Okay, so I go by my persona instead of instead of by my legal name. Why? It's for my own protection. When I'm on the streets, I am Friar Tuck. When I'm off the streets, I am my legal name. I do not want my son's name tarnished. I do not want my family name tarnished. I do not want to bring ill will upon other people. That is one reason, is for anonymity. But other people do it because, again, as I told you, the criminal justice system, it will force you down this road to become the things that they want you to be, so that they can therefore harvest you and get the most money out of you. Okay? And you have to have the anonymity. It's for protection. It's like your right to privacy. And as a hobo, you have no privacy. The one private thing that you can have is your name. And when people call you by your legal name, when you go by your street name, that is not appropriate. That is not okay. You will get yourself in a lot of trouble. Okay? Because you are putting somebody else in danger when you do that. And that is the purpose of having a persona. So, your persona is not something that is picked out by you. I did not pick out Friar Tuck. I would have never thought of Friar Tuck. I would have thought about Jason the Wise or the Great Gaffigan. I don't know. Anything. I would have never thought of Friar Tuck. See, the thing is when people come across you, because you see so many people between the housies and other hobos and everything else like that, it's easier to recognize somebody than it is to call them by their name. And over time, what'll happen is you will go out and you will originally start out, because you'll be square at that point. As a square, they're gonna let your personality show who you are. And so Friar Tuck he was the guy that helped out Robin Hood. He was the emissary, and in a lot of ways he was a leader. He was the one who was calling the shots for the attacks and for a lot of the other stuff. But the thing was it was Robin Hood who was seen as the leader, but he in so many ways was a corrupt and sympathizing cleric in so many ways. And this is why I talk about the fantasy anyways, is because you'll see it. If you watch the interview, you'll see it. I'm still in the process of editing it. This is a long video, but this is things that you should know should you get caught in a situation. Because, your name, let them choose your name. And whatever it is that you see, so, like steak sauce. I see A111, A1, 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 111, A1. Okay, well, you know what? It's really hard for me to say all that, and plus, it's just, I'm not going to say all that stuff. So what am I going to do? Well, every time I see him, the first thing that comes to mind is steak sauce because I see A1 steak sauce. And so what I'm going to end up doing, and what I have done, is I've given him his street name. His street name is steak sauce. So if he ever loses his place, he ever has to go out on the road, or he ever needs to keep his anonymity, he can always go by steak sauce. Okay, and now did he pick that name? No. Would he have picked that name? Probably not. But because every time I see him and I see his comments, I think steak sauce. And so therefore that is his street name. That is his name of anonymity. And it is a term of endearment. Just like calling you my road dogs. You guys are my road dogs. It is a term of endearment. It means you are part of my crew. It means that I can trust you and you can trust me. We can't trust anybody else, but we can trust each other. Because that's really the way it is. When you form a crew, when you form your community, it's the people that you trust because you know everybody else isn't trustworthy. And I think that might also be another reason why my constant pursuit of truth. But with that, thanks for watching. I hope that you learned something, and I'll see you in the next episode.